Welcome to another edition of Bigfoots Pad Paranormal Radio. Today's show is going to be about the Battle of Los Angeles from 1942, and it's going to be about the infamous Phoenix Lights. Tune in because this is going to be one show you don't want to miss.
Ladies and gentlemen, it seems we have a problem. I would like to introduce Bigfoots Pad Paranormal Investigations Team.
Welcome to Bigfoots Pad Paranormal. For today's show, I think we have the whole panel on for today, so Tim should be coming on in a moment. But yeah, so Nick, did you want to start off with a little bit of news for our listeners?
Yes. Well, we'll dive right into the news right now. Recently, a new crop circle has surfaced in a field in England. It looks very similar to what is known as a Buddhist endless knot. The complexity of the circle has many questions being raised. Pilot Matthew Williams snapped a picture of the circle and is not sure of what could have made the circle. Crop circles have been appearing in England all summer long lately. Some think it is hoaxers, but others think that the circles come from extraterrestrial origins due to the massive complexity of the circles. So no one really knows where these circles are coming from. Well, what would you think about that, Jer?
Crop circles are weird. You kind of have to take it on like a case-to-case basis. I kind of think the more complex they are, the less likely they are to be real is what I kind of think. What about you, Brent?
Yeah, that's kind of the way I see it, because, sometimes they could be... I mean, not all of them are going to be real. Like, some of them are, at least some of them are going to be hoaxes. So it's kind of, you have to actually do a lot of research and, a lot of studying.
Yeah. Well, Nick, I know, what was it? They have those infamous board technique where they smash it down with the board. But I know that when it comes time to looking at, like, a molecular level or looking at, like, under a microscope, they said that you could tell that it's nothing out of the ordinary. But yet, if you look at a real crop circle, of course, you could tell that something's not right with the soil or with the way the wheat was smashed down. I know we had an expert on our show. What was it? I think his name was Dean Kearney or something like that. I think that's his name. He was on here. Okay, you remember that, Brent?
Yeah.
And then he threatened Brent with his life. But, yeah, Nick.
Yeah.
Did you see the pictures of the crop circle that they're talking about that's in question?
Yeah, I did see the pictures. The crop circles in question are actually quite extraordinary. I usually don't do this, but I'm going to go to the opposite opinion of you and Brett, and I would say I think they're not hoaxers, because the level of detail that these circles have is just breathtaking. it looks like a work of art that was drawn into the field. I mean, you could say hoaxers did that, but you would have to have some very good resources and a lot of time, and just, I would say that because of the complexity, the likelihood of these circles being made by hoaxers is actually less than not. So I would think that these circles might be made by aliens.
Well, Jared, you've seen that old I think it's made in the late 90s. There was a video filmed of it looked almost like a light or a probe that actually was creating a crop circle. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that was that's the video that led me to believe, because I used to think that all crop circles were fake, but
I've seen that video. It is pretty interesting. Well, on to the next story. The Easter Island statues are being excavated right now, and bodies attached to the heads of the statues have been found. Tuna bones at an excavation site lead people to think that the statues are man-made and not from alien origins. People have thought there was more to the statues for quite some time there on Easter Island. In October of 2011, an expedition was underway that showed bodies attached to the heads that are buried deep underground. A weird type of pictograph has been found on the statues. Many of the symbols associated with those pictographs are supposed to represent the sun and rainbows. The tuna skeletons that were found near some sites are theorized to be rewards given to the makers of the statues by whoever employed them or enslaved them to make the statues. So what do you think about that, Tim, with the Easter Island statues? Do you think they're more extraterrestrial or human?
Personally, I think they're more Polynesian than human. That's what I think. They're made by the Polynesian inhabitants.
Yeah, me too. How about you, Jeremy?
Yeah, I think that they're man-made, but I think as far as what they were used for, what they represent, we're not really sure. I mean, we could guess as to why these things are around or why they made them, but we're not really going to have a 100% certain why they did that.
Oh, no, of course not. Here's a news story. Yeah. I was going to say, here's a news story that might get your jollies off a little bit. A new photo of Nessie has been taken recently. George Edwards, a Nessie hunter, has snapped a shot of a hump in the Loch Ness. The photo has been looked at by various experts, and no answer as to what is in the photo has been reached. Edwards has spent about 60 hours per week for the past 26 years, looking for the creature. The experts used to analyze the photo came from the U.S. military and independent research bodies of monster investigators. Mr. Edwards said that the creature was moving towards Urquhart Castle and was a grayish color when he took the photo. He claims this is the best sighting ever. Have you guys heard about that? I've seen the picture. It's good. It's not something that's going to make you drop your jaw like the Patterson film, but it kind of adds a little bit to the corpus of evidence that gives credence to the existence of Nessie. I personally don't really know what is in the picture. It probably is Nessie, but maybe it's a sturgeon or a large fish, because Tim, dealing with cameras for a long time, that the picture can be distorted when you take it. When you take a scenery, when you take a scene with a camera, things can become weird. Like things can appear bigger or smaller or farther or closer. Yeah. So
yeah. Yeah, because I actually seen this. Well, yeah, I seen this article on Yahoo News when it first came out, like 2 days ago, I think it was, or 3 days ago. The picture, like Nick said, the picture is nothing like out of the ordinary, but, or I mean, it is because it obviously may be a lake monster, but it's not like it's not one of those cases where or pictures where you're gonna be believed by it. But I don't know. The picture, like you said, it could be Nessie. Because if I don't remember right, I think the picture has just something large and black in it, right, Nick?
Yeah, it's a large black bump that rises out of the water.
So if we get a picture of a mysterious creature, like you know how they name it like Patty, or they name it this, or they name it that.
Yeah.
Like, so if we see something, we're gonna name ours Brent.
Okay.
Brent's the Bigfoot, or Brent's the lake monster, or
Brent the lake monster. Yeah.
We Brent's pet.
All right. Here's another crop circle story for you guys. A crop circle appeared in Washington State recently in a wheat field. The owners of the field, Cindy and George Grebe, are mystified. The remote location and lack of damage suggest extraterrestrial origins. The crop circles were first spotted on July 24th of this year. The field is 10 miles south of the largest hydropower dam in the U.S. The circle itself resembles a four-leaf clover. This is not the first set of circles to appear in Lincoln County, Washington. The makers of the formation are unknown, and the Grebes are choosing to be lighthearted about the circles. Maybe we just discussed some crop circles in England, but I thought it'd be kind of interesting to talk about some crop circles here in the States for a second.
It's always better to talk about them in the States because they're a lot closer to it.
Yeah. Well, since we already talked about crop circles in general, I guess we'll move on to the last news story, and that is about something known as the Beltway UFO. The Beltway UFO, which was seen over Washington, D.C. area highways, has been found out to be an experimental aircraft. The X-47B is a drone from the Navy that surpasses earlier drone capabilities. The saucer-shaped object caused a flurry of 911 calls when it was first spotted. The Navy says that this is the future of military technology. It was not a secret, they said, but they did not go out to advertise it either. The drone is an unmanned fighter jet. It is remote controlled, but if the signal is lost connecting the base to the jet, then the jet has an autopilot switch that flies it back to the base if the signal is lost. Hey Brent, I know you work at an Air Force base. Have you heard anything like this at all?
Not really. I mean, I haven't heard anything, but I mean, they could be testing stuff like that. I mean, it's not that far of a leap from where we are right now. So I mean, it is possible that they could be testing that type of stuff.
Well, because I know Brady hasn't heard anything about it, but I know he builds them for a living.
Yeah. No.
But yeah, I think it's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool.
An unmanned fighter jet. I know there was a movie that came out a couple of years ago about that unmanned fighter jet. So I'm not sure what it was called. I'd have to look it up. But like I said, it's pretty interesting to see where we're headed and in the direction where everything is becoming automated and people are being replaced by machines. This would go into a totally new topic for a radio show, like the rise of the machines and the Matrix and Terminator and all these.
We don't have to worry. Arnold Schwarzenegger's still alive in our generation, so we'll be fine.
Yeah, he'll save us from the machines.
The generation after ours that has to worry.
Yeah, but
And if Arnold Schwarzenegger were to die off, he'd still have Brent.
Yeah, that's true. Brent would still save.
And then we'd have Brent still.
All right, but that's all the news I have for today. Which topic do you want to dive into first, guys?
Nick, can you do the Battle for Los Angeles? I'm having issues with my notes right here.
Oh, okay. Well, the Battle for Los Angeles is a
the Battle of Los Angeles. Sorry.
Of Los Angeles. Sorry, Mr. Pedantic Elitist, but the Battle of Los Angeles.
The Battle for Los Angeles is that movie.
Oh, the Battle of Los Angeles. I apologize, but the Battle of Los Angeles is a remarkable event that happened in our nation's history that dealt with extraterrestrial visitors. It happened, I believe, a few years before the Roswell incident. In my opinion, I would even say that this incident is far more greater than Roswell itself. I'm not sure if a lot of people know about this incident. I didn't know about this incident actually probably until a month ago when I was watching the History Channel and I seen a show about it. So I decided that we should probably put this on the radio show because it sounded pretty interesting. But basically, I'll give a little general overview here first of what happened, then I'll get into more detailed descriptions of the event. First, the Battle of L.A. was when an alien spacecraft, or some type of craft, but most likely an alien spacecraft, came and flew from the Pacific Ocean over the city of Los Angeles to the area that is now LAX airport during World War II.
1942, by the way, Nick.
Back in 1942, yes. It was
the week
shortly
after Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, it was very shortly after the Pearl Harbor attack, so this caused a great startle, as all you listening can imagine. So the military was put on a high alert, and a response was made, and aircraft was sent out to intercept this UFO, and anti-aircraft guns were shot off into the sky at this thing. We're talking about a full-scale fight here. We had a guy on earlier last year, or the year before, Frank Fucino, who talked about how the government had dogfights with UFOs and whatnot, and this is an example of that type of thing we discussed with him. But in the evening, in the morning, in 1942, an aircraft was flying over. Oh wait, I'm having. At 2:50. No wait.
I got my notes stuff. It got me to just read it.
Oh yeah, dude, mine are like messed up. Excuse my language there.
I wrote the Battle of Los Angeles, also known as the Great Los Angeles Air Raid, is the name given by contemporary sources to the rumored enemy attack and subsequent anti-aircraft artillery barrage, which took place from late February 24th to early 25th on February 1942 over Los Angeles. The incident occurred very close to the date of the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. Initially, the target of the aerial barrage was thought to be an attacking force from Japan, but speaking at a press conference shortly afterward, Secretary of the Navy, Frank Knox, called the incident a false alarm. Newspapers of the time published a number of reports and speculations of a government cover-up. Some modern-day ufologists suggested the targets were extraterrestrial spacecraft. And when documenting the incident in 1983, the U.S. Office of Air Force History attributed the event to a case of war nerves, likely triggered by a lost weather balloon or stray flares, it says, and shell bursts from adjoining batteries. So you got this extraterrestrial spacecraft, as some people were saying, flying over the city. You got to tell me this is war nerves? 1,400 artillery shells fired, and this is a case of mass hysteria, and I find that kind of hard to believe. Or he said it's a lost weather balloon. This has to be a pretty strong weather balloon to not get popped or to be foreseen by spotlights, anti-aircraft guns, and these are military generals you're talking about. They're not just going to open fire on a weather balloon like that with all that many guns, you know?
Oh, Jared, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but really quick. I see the difference between your notes and mine. My notes are more of a detailed account of the events that happened that morning, while you have more of the general overview type of stuff. So when you're done with what you have to say, I can go in and give a detailed fill-in for your overview, if that's okay.
That's fine. I have two more things I was going to read.
All right.
Well, this one says, air raid sirens sounded throughout Los Angeles County on the night of the 24th and the 25th in February 1942. A total blackout was ordered, and thousands of air raid wardens were summoned to their positions. At 3:16 a.m., the 37th Coast Artillery Brigade began firing 12.8-pound anti-aircraft shells at the reported aircraft. Over 1,400 shells would eventually be fired, and pilots of the 4th Interceptor Command were alerted, but their aircraft remained grounded. The artillery continued sporadically until 4:14 in the morning, and the all clear was sounded and the blackout was lifted at 7:21 in the morning. In addition to several buildings being damaged by friendly fire, 3 civilians were killed by anti-aircraft guns, and another 3 died of heart attacks attributed to stress from the bombardment. The incident was front-page news along the U.S. Pacific coast and only had some mass media coverage throughout the rest of the country. So the thing I find strange about this, you got to tell me, if this was a weather balloon, they're going to keep the whole entire Los Angeles blackout until 7 in the morning, and you got to tell me you can't see that's a weather balloon when the sun's up?
Yeah,
like I said,
they even
had the Air Force getting there. They didn't end up launching the planes, but they were getting ready to. I understand this was right after Pearl Harbor, so we were on high alert. But it doesn't really make any sense to me that they would do all of this over a weather balloon or mass hysteria. What do you think about it, Brent?
Yeah, that's kind of weird how it was just like what you were saying, like it's kind of hard to believe that it's mass hysteria, that like people were just like, oh my God, just like shooting in the air, and it was actually just a weather balloon.
They got massive fire in the air all night long, and not just that, you have this is the U.S. military with all these generals and things. They must have genuinely thought there was some kind of a threat out there all night long to be shooting like that.
Of course.
Yeah. Well, not that it's the beginning of a war. We're not completely prepared for a war, so to waste that many rounds would be pretty stupid just for fun, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I was saying also, they said that they killed civilians with friendly fire. I was saying, to take a chance like that, they must have thought there was some kind of a threat, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, Nick, you said that, I know you would be good at this. Can you describe what's in the photos that made the front page of the Los Angeles Times?
Oh, well, in the photo, there's a bunch of searchlights spotted to one area in the sky, and you can see this massive underbelly of a dark craft. I really don't know how to describe it. I have a description from a witness I can read later on, but all you see is the underbelly of this large metal hull in the sky. That's probably the best way to say it. And you have all these guns pointed at the hull, and they're firing at it. So it looks right out of the movie Independence Day. That's probably the most accurate comparison to describe it, or to compare it to. is to say that the picture that appeared in the LA Times is right out of Independence Day, the movie with Will Smith and whatnot back in the 90s. So it's a pretty crazy photo. When I saw it, I lost my breath and my heart pitter-pattered, because if I had ever seen extraterrestrials, that was it.
I was going to say, have you seen the photo, Brent?
Personally, I have not seen the photo.
Yeah, I have. The picture is very intriguing, and like Nick said, it does look like straight something out of, like you would just assume to be extraterrestrial.
I'm kind of surprised they actually released that to the public, considering that would be a threat to national security. They would actually put it on the front page of the news all over the country. But I guess since Roswell was in 1947, one of the first major UFO crash that the government, that Stanton Friedman helped uncover, I guess they didn't really know how to deal with this sort of thing in 1942. I mean, 5 years before the most major event of the 20th century, according to Stanton Friedman, and I actually agree with that. But
yeah, they truly didn't know what they were dealing with then.
Yeah. What do you think, Brian? Think that could explain why they put that on the front page?
Yeah, it sounds plausible.
Well, I have a couple of notes on the press's response from the air raid. Within hours of the end of the air raid, Secretary of the Navy Frank Knox held a press conference saying the entire incident was a false alarm due to anxiety and war nerves. Knox's comments were followed by statements from the Army the very next day that reflected General George C. Marshall's belief that the incident might have been caused by commercial airplanes used for psychological warfare campaigns to generate panic.
Wow.
That is just trash. That theory is. I'll give you guys a couple little notes in a minute, but that theory is thrown right out the window when you get the facts straight.
I know you just said what you think about it, but state your opinion on the commercial airplane theory.
Man, I put that theory right along with the theory that there was a silver-painted chimpanzee dancing around on the Sutton farm. That's why I put that theory.
Well, you also have to imagine, if there's one civilian aircraft, I'm pretty sure that all of those anti-aircraft guns, 1,400 shells, would be able to hit one airplane, though, wouldn't they?
Yeah. Well, here, I'll just share with you this brief note I have here. Well, when the anti-aircraft guns were being fired at the UFO, the shells did not miss the aircraft, but rather it seemed like they were hitting a bubble on the outside of the aircraft. In other words, it seemed like the aircraft itself had some sort of a shielding system. So their aim wasn't off. These aircraft guns were hitting their target, but the shells were not exploding onto the craft itself. Rather, there was a shield system that prevented the shells from exploding onto the hull of the craft. That totally throws out the commercial airline theory or a Japanese attack theory or any other theory that I could think of dealing with something from Earth.
Well, that must be a pretty strong weather balloon.
Yeah.
Here's another thing, though, I was thinking. They said that the military took the chance of firing friendly fire and killing civilians, and it was damaging all these houses and things. Like you said, they said that the shells were hitting the target, but nothing was happening. Like Frank Buscino said, they were giving orders to shoot down these UFOs all the way from World War II up until at least the 80s. So do you think this is proof that the military knew this was a UFO ahead of time, possibly, is what one of the people in our chat room was saying?
Well, it's definitely possible because there are encounters with the third kind, extraterrestrials going back in our country's history. So perhaps the government has known about UFOs for quite some time, longer than we think. Or maybe they thought it was an attack from Japan or one of the other Axis powers, but they found out later on after trying to shoot this thing down that it was not something from this planet.
Okay, Nick, before we get into your notes, I have one more thing I wanted to read.
Okay.
I wrote, some press, like from newspapers, suspected a cover-up. An editorial in the Long Beach Independent wrote, there's a mysterious reticence about the whole affair, and it appears that some sort of censorship is trying to halt discussion of the topic. And it says, speculation was rampant as to invading airplanes or a secret weapon, since it didn't look like an airplane in the picture. Now, why would the military censor the media about the incident if it wasn't anything that was a threat to national security or out of the ordinary as far as Japanese planes or German weapons, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What do you think, Brent?
About what it could be?
No, why would they be censoring the matter if it wasn't something that was classified or something that was a threat to national security?
Why wouldn't they censor it?
Yeah, because it says that they're trying to censor the media, and I was saying, why would, if it wasn't something out of the ordinary, top secret, wouldn't they be letting them freely talk about this?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, just I guess they know, so they're just trying to be like, oh no, we're right, you're wrong. We know what you saw in Tucson. Like Brent said, in Tucson.
Yeah.
Say, did you have notes you wanted to go over, Nick?
Oh, yeah. Well, I have compiled some accounts of the event of the Battle of L.A. on February 25th, 1942. The object seemingly came out of nowhere on the morning of February 25th. It came from a steep angle and went on a southward trajectory over the Pacific Ocean. It flew on to lower altitudes and leveled off. The object then went eastward, just going above water over the Pacific towards Los Angeles. At about 120 miles out, the object got into the range of military detection. When it was in the range of military detection, it slowed down. It first popped onto radar when it hovered along the north side of the Santa Monica Mountains. It went along the edge of the mountains to position itself behind the military's radar when it was detected. The object made sure to stay away from Mines Field, or now Los Angeles Airport. The object moved to Los Angeles, but then went back behind the mountains and disappeared for quite some time. At 2:15 a.m., the military was put on high alert. In a released government document, it said that there was use of radar to detect this object. In other words, there was a high alert that would be similar to what the military would think if someone like Japan was going to attack. So this isn't just some weather balloon. That's why I was laughing at the weather balloon theory, because the military was genuinely afraid of this aircraft coming into the flight zone. The AAF kept planes on the ground in alert. The object at first appeared and disappeared from radar. At 3:06 a.m., anti-aircraft guns turned inland and started firing over the city into the sky at the hull of this craft. They say it sounded like a volcano was erupting over the city. to kind of give you listeners an auditory vision in your head of what was going on. Yes.
For our weekly segment, though, you have to do your impression of a volcano over the city. Now you can continue.
Okay. My weekly imitation of what was going on.
And one quick second, one note.
Yes.
Brent, was that an acceptable auditory explanation for our listeners?
Yeah, I'd say that was acceptable.
Okay.
Right. Continue, Nick.
Swarms of planes, numbering in the hundreds to even the thousands, then were dispatched to intercept the UFO. No bombs were dropped, but as Jeremy said earlier, 1,440 rounds were fired at the aircraft. During the event, the UFO did not fire back or make any aggressive moves towards the military. There was also no damage to the aircraft. Again, the theory that this craft came from Earth is just burned up and turned into ashes because no aircraft on this planet could have taken 1,400 rounds and have still flown. It is preposterous. Yes. And today, World War II, and probably 100 years in the future from now, no aircraft could take that amount of damage. Well, it didn't take any damage, but no craft could take on 1,400 rounds and not be damaged. So this is why I am so vehemently saying that the craft is alien, because this thing took quite a beating on it. It was a juggernaut. It didn't get a scratch. Mm-hmm. And there's several theories circulating as to why the craft was not aggressive to the military. And one theory is that the aliens just wanted to demonstrate to us, humans, that they are more powerful than we are. Like, hey, look, you guys can fire 1,400 rounds at us and not scratch us. So don't mess with us. Another theory that's also out there is that they were just doing some sort of a reconnaissance mission to scout us out and see what we were about. Mm-hmm. A young 8-year-old boy...
Well, because it was over one of the largest cities in the United States, too.
Oh, yeah. It was over, I think the second largest city next to New York, if I have my facts straight. So the reconnaissance, both theories would make sense, I guess, in that context, but we'll never really know unless we get to talk to the aliens ourselves someday.
You will.
We will. They'll talk to Brent.
You will.
Oh, I will. Oh, okay. I'll get to talk to Brent. I mean, the aliens are going to talk. Man, I'm starting to sound like Rick Perry when he did that syrup thing in New Hampshire for a second. A young boy who was 8 years old at the time of the incident, named C. Scott Littleton, a retired college professor, said, and this is an eyewitness to the event, the object slowed and it was caught in the glare of searchlights, while the military shot ineffectual rounds at the craft. It just flew along a path toward the Palos Verdes hills and disappeared. There was only one object in the sky, not several, as some witnesses have described. Another eyewitness said the craft flew over his house. It was so big, he said, his family only saw the bottom. The guy and his family and several other people in the neighborhood got guns and got into some cars and chased after the aircraft. The object was reportedly bigger than a Zeppelin blimp. I guess to give a visual for all you guys listening out there, just see if you can remember, if you've ever seen this, seeing the film of the Hindenburg exploding. That's a Zeppelin. It's a very, very large aircraft, a very large blimp, or even a Goodyear blimp might be a good comparison for this aircraft. Apparently, someone did some triangulation calculations. to figure out that the object was about 800 feet across. That's pretty big, guys, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I was thinking of another analogy earlier to compare this craft to, and this just came back into my mind. Just think of a battleship, an aircraft carrier basically flying in the sky. That's probably what this thing looked like from the ground. Think of an aircraft carrier. Think of looking at the bottom of one of those, on the ground up in the sky. It's probably the best visual I can give. The witness described the object as wide and flat. He said it seemed wedged or sloped towards the top. It had no windows or lights, and it had no exterior objects attached to it. So this thing's just a giant, massive hunk of metal flying in the sky, and it's taking on 1,400 rounds of ammunition and not going down. It's pretty crazy, guys.
Yeah.
So I can just say, imagine this. Imagine back in World War II, a week after Pearl Harbor, massive aircraft flies right over Los Angeles. Aircraft guns and airplanes are firing at this thing, and it's not going down. I could just imagine what was going through the people's heads who witnessed this. Like, wow, maybe this is it. Maybe this is the end of the world or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's just crazy that this isn't really talked about that much. We always talk about Roswell and some various other UFO encounters, but this is hardly ever talked about, at least from what I've seen. And it surprises me, since this sounds like it was not just a dogfight, it was a large-scale battle between something from outer space and us. So it surprises me that we don't talk about it. I mean, us being paranormal investigators. Of course, the government's not going to talk about it. Like you said earlier, they're probably trying to cover something up. Do you think they're trying to cover up something, Tim?
With no doubt in my mind. Just the fact they tried to say it was a weather balloon, and then they tried to basically play it off like nothing happened, from basically like an itchy trigger figure. That was ridiculous too.
Yeah.
So yeah, easy to say they are. I think they just felt ashamed that they couldn't tell the public what it was, and that they didn't even have as some sort of a wreckage to even show the public.
Well, one of the boys, there's the two witnesses that I just quoted from, were young boys at the time of the incident, and they said they went and collected the shrapnel and wreckage from the airplanes in the sky. As Jeremy said earlier, some people were shot down by friendly fire, so I assume that was the wreckage that these young boys, well, they're not young boys anymore, but these young boys had collected. So
yeah,
this thing, like I said, I don't want to keep repeating myself, but this is just totally going over my head and just creeping me out, even sort of, that this thing took on 1,400 rounds of ammunition and didn't get a dent.
Yeah.
What happens if these guys decide to come back and they're not so friendly and they do turn out to be aggressive and they start firing at us? We're not going to be able to fight back, and, well, we could theorize as to what would happen after that, but it certainly wouldn't be good.
I was going to say, we have about 45 minutes left in the show. Let's say, Nick, do you think we should get on our other topics soon?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we can move on to the Phoenix Lights.
All right, we're going to go on a quick commercial break, and when we get back, we are going to talk about the Phoenix Lights. And you're listening to BFP Radio.
I know Cool, and Cool's teaming up with a good balanced breakfast.
Teaming up with Mr. T cereal that's getting on the team that knows how cool breakfast can be. You get a crispy corn taste with a touch of brown sugar. Teaming up with Mr. T.
It's Cool.
Teaming up with Mr. T. Golden sweet crispy teas. One bite and you're gonna be eating with the team that's teaming up with Mr. T.
Hello. I'm Mr. Ed. A horse is a horse, of course, and no one can talk to a horse, of course. That is, of course, unless the horse is the famous Mr. Ed. Go right to the source and ask the horse. He'll give you the answer that you endorse. He's always on a steady course. Talk to Mr. Ed. People yakety-yak the street and waste your time a day. But Mr. Ed will never speak unless he has something to say. A horse is a horse, of course, and this one will talk till his voice is hoarse. You never heard of a talking horse? Well, listen to this.
I am Mr. Ed.
I love Basso, it's rich in chocolate tea. Chocolate-flavored Basso is mighty good for me. Mama puts it in my milk for extra energy. Basso gives me iron and sunshine vitamin D. Oh, I love Basso. That's the drink for me.
And we're back on BFP Paranormal Radio. Speaking of that Bosco theme, that just reminded me, Nick, we got to toast to a nice chocolate milk cup of Bosco after the show. I forgot we had that.
Yeah, we have to. I was just telling Tim that.
Well, we just, on the first half of the show, we're talking about the Battle of Los Angeles, which is one of the most famous UFO incidents in the United States history, besides Roswell, of course. But we're going to get started on another topic that's just as strange and just as weird. It's known as the Phoenix Lights. The way I have this set up, I have a general description, and then I have, I guess, a chronological order of the two UFOs that were spotted that night. So the Phoenix Lights, and sometimes called the Lights over Phoenix, are a series of widely sighted, unidentified flying objects or objects observed in the skies over the United States, or over the U.S. states of Arizona, Nevada, and the Mexican state of Sonora on March 13th, 1997. Lights of varying descriptions were seen by thousands of people between 7:30 and 10:30 at night in a space covering about 300 miles from the Nevada line through Phoenix to the edge of Tucson. There are two distinct events involved in the incident: a triangular formation of lights seen to pass over the state, and a series of stationary lights seen in the Phoenix area. The United States Air Force identified the second group of lights as flares dropped by an A-10 Warthog aircraft during training exercises over the Barry-Goldwater Range. Witnesses claim to have observed a huge carpenter's square-shaped UFO containing 5 spherical lights, or possibly light-emitting engines. Fifth Symington, the governor at the time, was one witness to the incident, and he later called the object otherworldly. So before we get started, I know that was a lot of information to take in there for people that don't know what I'm talking about. To make a long story short, there's 2 different formations of UFOs, or a UFO, that was seen on March 13th, 1997. Apparently, there was initial reports of several UFOs flying in a formation that were doing zigzags around the skies and doing different things, but traveling together like a flock of birds would. And second, incident that was sighted that night was one giant UFO that was seen over southern Arizona. So before we get started, I got to get everyone's initial opinions like we usually do. Starting with Brent, of course.
Of course.
Of course. You have to go first.
So what, it's about the Phoenix Lights?
Yeah, what's your initial opinion before we get into all the details?
I think it's extraterrestrial, honestly. I mean, just from the reports and there's no way. Well, in my opinion, I don't think there's any way that could be flares in the air, like going off in sequence.
Mm-hmm. Well, do you think that could have been any kind of a military weapon from the United States? Is another question. I was going to see what everyone was going to say.
Well, and if it is, I don't know why they're testing it over the city of Phoenix.
Like that massive of a aircraft, can that be a man-made object that huge flying around? Your opinion, Nick?
Oh wait.
What's that, Nick?
Oh, no, I think Nick's phone is acting up. Nick's phone's acting up here. I think it died on him.
Oh.
Wait, I got it on.
All right, so Nick, do you think that there's any way the Phoenix Lights, if you're familiar with it, can that be a military weapon of some sort?
I guess it's within the realm of possibility, but given the dimensions of the craft associated with the Phoenix Lights, I don't think it would be something that the military would make.
Before I get into this, Nick, I was going to say, everybody's familiar with this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
all right, well,
I know. Yeah, I know about it, yeah.
Well, I'm going to start with the initial chronological order of the report. At about 8:55 p.m. at night, a man reported seeing a V-shaped object above Henderson, Nevada. He said it was about the size of a Boeing 747 and sounded like rushing wind and had 6 lights on its leading edge. The lights reportedly transversed northwest to southeast, traveling into Arizona. So before we get further into this, here's something interesting I wrote. The witness stated that the UFO made a noise or a sound of rushing wind, which is unusual. Most often you hear of UFOs not making any sounds at all. So before we get started, I was going to say, what's your opinions on this? And could that be a man-made UFO if it's making noises and usually they don't?
Well, here, I'd like to comment first on it because I read a news story a few months ago in which some people saw a UFO in an airplane and it made a noise, and I remember we were talking about this very same topic. UFOs usually don't make noises, so why would that one make a noise? My best answer would be perhaps this alien species had a different type of engine than another alien species had, for instance, or maybe this craft that they were using made noise instead of the other crafts that they usually use. For example, if you hear a YF-22 Raptor, a fighter jet the Air Force uses, it makes a sonic boom because it goes faster than the speed of sound. But the stealth bomber makes hardly any noise at all. So maybe the alien...
Put down your weapon. You have 20 seconds to comply.
Maybe the aliens who came to visit us over Phoenix decided to use a craft which made noise.
Or they just had older technology.
It could be older technology. I mean, there's 1,000 possibilities out there, including the fact that it could have been a man-made UFO like you suggested.
But you do admit, though, that it's out of the ordinary to make noise.
Yes, it is out of the ordinary for UFOs to make any noise at all.
You agree, Brent?
Yeah. I agree.
Well, here's another one. An unidentified former police officer from Paulden, Arizona, claimed to have the next person to report a sighting after leaving his house at about 10:15 p.m. As he was driving north, he allegedly saw a cluster of reddish or orange lights in the sky, comprising 4 lights together and a 5th light trailing them or following. Each of the individual lights in the formation appeared to the witness to consist of 2 squares, point sources of orange light. He returned home and, through binoculars, watched the lights until they disappeared over the south of the horizon. 3 things I noticed. He noticed there was color. Not very many witnesses noticed color on the Phoenix light. Nick, you're getting a little background noise there.
Oh, I apologize.
Okay, Nick, I was going to say, you said the Sutton Farm UFO had colors. Is there any way to give a description of the Sutton Farm UFO?
Well, from what I recall off the cuff, the Sutton Farm UFO was a disc shape, and the witness said that it displayed all the colors of the rainbow. So the Sutton Farm UFO displayed a great deal of color.
Yeah, I thought that was worth mentioning as a note. Well, the next sightings were in Prescott and Prescott Valley. Oh, wait, let me take a step back. So, yeah, Nick, you're making a lot of noise in your background.
Oh, I'm sorry, a lot of the dryer down here is pretty, or the washer's kind of loud. I'm putting something away.
Oh, well, I was going to say, well, the first witness clearly stated that the UFO was a singular object. The second UFO said it was more like a cluster of UFOs flying around doing whatever. Do you think these are 2 separate objects there, Tim, or do you think that's the same thing? Maybe it's some sort of a hybrid aircraft.
Well, I think it's the same object because it was reported to be so massive that it, you know, most people said they believed it was one thing, like one giant solid object.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my personal opinion, what I think it is.
But no, I was saying, well, the first guy said it was a singular object. The second guy said it was not one object. It was like several small objects.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying, I think it's the, because you could also misinterpret it too. Like a lot of people said they thought it was several objects too, and then they've seen it, and then they've seen the different lights on it too, and then they think it was all part of one craft.
I'm just reading what the MUFON said. But anyways, the next sighting reports come from the Prescott Valley. Lights were also reportedly seen in the areas of Prescott and Prescott Valley, like I just said. At approximately 10:17 at night, callers began reporting the object was definitely solid because it blocked out much of the sky as it passed over. And I wrote, if it were a man-made UFO, would they really fly it over a heavily populated residential area, like Tim was saying earlier? I don't think they would. And it says John Kaiser was standing outside with his wife and sons in Prescott Valley when they noticed a cluster of lights to the west-northwest in their position. The lights formed a triangular pattern, but all of them appeared to be red, except the light at the nose of the object, which was distantly white. The object or objects, which had been observed at approximately 2 to 3 minutes with binoculars, passed directly overhead, and they said it banked to the right and disappeared. I guess something interesting. They claimed that the object was red or had red lights on it. And the guy from Henderson said that he looked through his binoculars and clearly said that he thought that it was orange. What do you think about that, Brent?
They thought it was orange?
Why did one witness say it was orange and one said it was red? Could it have changed colors, or is this something different?
It could have changed colors. I mean, from what I've seen from the videos and whatnot, I mean, to me it looks orange, but maybe, you don't know, maybe the person was colorblind and can't really see orange, so it looks red to them.
Well, there's a really easy explanation for that. See, I was going to say, if any of you guys out there have a boyfriend or girlfriend or a husband or a wife, and you go to pick clothing out or something out with, colors. I know when I used to go with my ex-girlfriend to go pick things out for our apartment, she would pick out something that was red, and I would pick up something that was, like, not quite red, but red, and she'd be like, that's not red. And I'm like, it's red. It's close enough. So basically what I'm saying is one person's red might not be another person's red. It might be another person's orange, or vice versa.
Yeah.
Depends on how you interpret the color, I guess. So one person could have seen, basically what I'm saying is the UFO could have had a light that was a reddish orange, so it could go either way.
Yeah.
Well, the UFO Reporting Center received the following report from the Prescott area. While doing astrophotography, I observed 5 yellow-white lights in a V formation moving slowly from northwest across the sky to northeast, and then then it turned around. The point of the V was in the direction of the movement, as if it was the front of the object. The first 3 lights were a fairly tight V, while 2 o'clock lights were further back, along with, I guess I'd say there's more lights at the front, and they got more sporadic as they got to the back. I estimated the 3 lights, so I'm getting tongue-tied here. Let me just skip that. They said that it was going at 5 degrees from where his position was.
And that's what they call Golden, New Hampshire?
Yeah.
You ever one of those moments?
Yeah.
There's no syrup involved.
Exactly.
Oh, that's what I was going to say. During the northwest-northeast transit, one of the lights broke off from the craft and did its own trailing position at 5 degrees from the regular craft, is what he said. And then it connected back with the craft. That's what I was going to say. So, does this mean there's ships or craft flying off of the main thing? Yeah, you know what I'm trying to say? Is it letting off these small crafts of its own, or what's the deal with that?
I'm not sure. It could have let off some smaller craft. Again, going back to why aliens would come here in the first place, they could have been on a reconnaissance research type of mission or whatnot to come here. So perhaps they deployed some type of probe or some smaller crafts to send some of their own, some of the aliens, down here to Earth. That's what I would think. If it was if they were here for combative reasons, then the small crafts would have came out and started to shoot at us, but they didn't. So that's why I tend to think they were just researching us, and this and many other instances.
Well, Brent, I was going to see what you think about this. I wrote, the triangular formation entered the Phoenix area next. Bill Greener, I think how you say that, he's a cement driver, was hauling a load of cement down a mountain north of Phoenix. He described the second group of lights. This is the second incident where the lights supposedly changed from the first incident to the second. He says, I'll never be the same. Before this, if anybody had told me they thought I'd seen a UFO, I would have told them, yeah, and I believe in the tooth fairy. Now I've got a whole new view, and I may be the dumb truck driver, but I've seen something that doesn't belong here. Greener stated that the lights hovered over the area for more than 2 hours, and it says it changed a skeptic into a believer. So, what do you think of that, Brent?
It's definitely weird. I mean, what color did he say it was?
He didn't really say the color or anything. He said it was over above where he was at for 2 hours almost.
So we were just sitting there watching it then?
Most likely.
That's definitely
The
weird.
report came in from a young man in the Kingman, Arizona area for Tim and Nick, because they know where that's at, who stopped his car at a payphone to report the incident to the police. The young man was en route to Los Angeles, called from a phone booth to report having seen a large, bizarre cluster of stars, as he said, moving slowly in the northern sky. This is a young man traveling, going wherever, going to Los Angeles, and he felt the need to pull over and call the police. That's how bad it scared this guy, or at least shocked him, I guess you could say. What do you think about that, Nick? Because, I mean, you've been to King. You've seen how remote that area is compared to traveling in, like, California or anywhere.
Yeah, it's a pretty remote area there along the freeway. And it's quite amazing that the man thought it was appropriate to call the police when he saw this thing, which really gives away how amazing or how just out of this, this is kind of a pun, I guess, how out of this world the craft that this young man saw was. It just scared him really badly, and he decided it would be appropriate to call the police. So this isn't something that you see every day over here in Phoenix or over near Kingman with this guy.
Well, I have a few explanations. I only have 23 minutes in the show. I'm going to try to say a few explanations before I talk about the reappearance of these lights. The first event of the V, which appeared over northern Arizona, was gradually traveled south over nearly the entire length of the state, eventually passing south of Tucson, was the apparently wedge-shaped object reported by the governor at the time. So the event started around 10:15 over Prescott and was seen south of Tucson around 10:45. It was like a 30-minute travel. Here's what the skeptics say. Proponents of the two separate events say that the first event has no provable explanation, but the second event says that the second incident people say were flares, military flares, or military airplanes flying in a formation. What do you guys think of that?
Well, like Brent said earlier, I think the military flares are out of the question.
Yeah. Well, here's an eyewitness. He says, Mitch Stanley, an amateur astronomer, observed high-altitude lights flying in formation using a telescope with 43 times magnification. After observing the lights, he told his mother, who was present at the time, that the lights were an aircraft. According to Stanley, the lights were quite clearly individual airplanes he'd seen with his telescope. A companion who was with him recalled asking Stanley at the time what the lights were, and he said they were planes. When Stanley first gave an account of his observations of the Discovery Channel with all the witnesses, he said that it was clearly an extraterrestrial object. So was he lying to the first researchers, or what was the deal going on with that? What do you think, Brent?
I think that's kind of strange.
Well, again, there's a very simple explanation for that question as well, I think. Money and fame can really change a person's opinion very quickly. And, how do I say this?
So be it, Jedi.
Okay, I know how to say this. The Discovery Channel is on television, and the object of the television station is to draw people in to buy things from the people who advertise on the station. Mm-hmm. So in other words, the Discovery Channel perhaps would want to sensationalize what this guy saw in order to draw people in. So maybe he changed his story at a little bit of convincing from some Discovery Channel people.
Well, like I was saying earlier, the first event where it was flying over Nevada and northern Arizona, that one is still unexplainable. The one that the military explained is the second event. They don't give any kind of explanation for the first event, besides it was their airplanes, which is a bunch of BS. But here's the second event. The U.S. Air Force explained the second event as slow-falling, long-burning illumination flares dropped by a flight of 4 Warthog aircraft on a training exercise at Luke Air Force Base. According to this explanation, the flares would have been visible in Phoenix and appeared to hover due to rising heat from the burning flares, creating a balloon effect to look like a UFO on their parachute while they descended. The lights then appeared to wink out as they fell behind the mountain range southwest of Phoenix. What do you think, Nick?
They said it was I'm sorry, I didn't hear what the last thing you said was.
The military said that they were flares dropped from 4 Warthog airplanes, but clearly people stated there was 5 to 8 lights, so I guess that already counts that out. But anyways, just for giggles, I'll tell you the rest of it. They said the flares were dropped in the sky, and the parachutes of the flares looked like UFOs flying through the sky, and as they descended towards the ground, the people in Phoenix could see them. And the rising heat from the desert made it more visible to the whole state.
That sounds
very asinine.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of good ways to. Yeah, it just sounds like a bunch of BS, to put it very bluntly. Again, that's one of it was airplanes, it was weather balloons, it was swamp gas. It's the 3 most common things we hear from the government in relation to UFOs.
Yeah. I was just saying, though, you got to tell me those flares can be seen hundreds of miles away in Mexico, in Nevada, too, though?
Yeah, I don't think it's possible. I mean, to be fair, you can see individual lights from a very far distance if there's not a lot of other lights surrounding it. Mm-hmm. For instance, if you go in an airplane and you're flying over the Mojave Desert or the desert around Las Vegas, Nevada, there are hardly any lights out in the desert because there's nobody out there. But if there is a single individual light out there, which could be as weak as a lit cigarette, that light could be seen from the airplane very brightly. So you can see lights from a far distance if there are not a lot of other lights around to interfere with that light. Just to kind of give a fair and balanced view of things, I guess I'd like to just throw that note in there.
Well, I actually went on the Air Force's website, and using the A-10 Warthog and the flares that were used at that time, the luminosity of the flares that they were saying they were using can be seen at maximum range, 50 to 70 miles away, with maximum condition. And last time I checked, Mexico and Nevada and the whole state of Arizona is farther than 70 miles.
Oh yeah, definitely. They're hundreds of thousands of miles apart.
Well, we have about 15 minutes left in the show, and I'm going to talk about the reappearance of the lights and then talk more about the Phoenix lights. In 2007, a repeat of the lights occurred on February 6, 2007, and was recorded by local Fox News television station. According to military officials in the Federal Aviation Administration, they were flares dropped by F-16 aircraft training. And I guess they kind of left it at that. I was saying, do you think this was a cover-up, or the military could have dropped the flares on purpose to try to cover up the original lights?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's completely possible that they tried to replicate the original light incident to cover it up. It's not like the government has never done that before, really. Yeah, the government is not an entity to be trusted at all, in my opinion. So I do believe that they could have set the flares off as kind of a red herring or a dummy. You know, they put it out to say, hey, look, we dropped some flares and it looks similar or just like the original Phoenix lights, so that means the Phoenix lights are flares. Mm-hmm. That's what they want the public to think, and I do not put it past the government to do something like that at all. So that's definitely something to think about.
Well, there's also explanations that could have been something, a similar craft, but I think it might just be a cover-up, of course. But in 2008, the lights appeared again. It says on April 21st, 2008, lights were again reported over North Phoenix by local residents and TV stations. According to witnesses, the lights formed a vertical line and then spread apart and made a diamond shape. And then the lights also formed a U shape at one point in time. The following day, on the news, a Phoenix resident who declined to be identified said that he had attached the flares to helium balloons and released them from his backyard. However, no name pictures of the reported hoaxer were ever released or anyone's name. So that's just some guy that pisses me off is what that is. What do you think, Brent? I guess Brent's busy. What's that, Brent?
What'd you say?
I said, did you hear what I just said about the hoaxer guy?
Oh, no.
Oh. Well, I was going to say, yeah, some guy attached a bunch of flares on some balloons and released them and put everyone into a panic. That guy just pisses me off.
just to get a rise.
We have about... what's that?
Jared, do you know if that hoaxer had any affiliation with Proof Positive on Sci-Fi Channel? Is that the show that always tries to go and debunk things?
That's one of them. There's a whole bunch of them. Well, I have a couple more pages of notes, but I have to condense it real quick due to time. The governor at the time, Symington, I think how you say that. Yeah, Symington. He went on TV making a mockery of the whole incident, brought aliens out on TV, people in costumes, and was basically causing a fuss. And he was saying that he didn't believe it was aliens and this and that. And it says now, recently in an episode of UFO Hunters called the Arizona Lights, he said that he contacted the military asking what the lights were, and the military said no comment. He pointed out that he was the governor of Arizona, not just an ordinary civilian. And I said, is that classified information? I thought it was flares, is what I wrote.
Yeah, why wouldn't they tell the governor of the state what was going on over his state?
Yeah. Well, what do you think, Tim?
But the whole governor thing?
Yeah.
Oh, no, at first I think, when the incident happened, he's in office. He doesn't want to be ridiculed, or if he's looking for a second term or something, he has to kind of play along. And then afterwards, when he said he switched his mind to be a believer, you know what I mean?
I was also thinking maybe they told him to shut up about it and told him to act like that, maybe.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, basically, intimidated to kind of play it off at first as like it's a joke and everything, and then afterwards, when he's out of office, he really has nothing to lose. So.
You got nothing to lose, like Rebel meets Rebel.
Okay,
well, Frances Barwood, the 1997 Phoenix City Councilwoman, launched an investigation into the Phoenix lights. And she said, they said that over 700 witnesses that she interviewed, the government never interviewed even one of those individuals, she said. Which is somewhat interesting, I guess. What do you think, Brent?
Gonna lay it on me?
Yep.
What, that they didn't interview anybody?
They claim that they interviewed all these witnesses and done their thorough research on what it could have been, the northern object, but when they said the researcher interviewed 700 witnesses, the government didn't interview not even one of them.
Yeah, that's kind of weird.
So basically they're lying. They're lying and they got them in another lie.
What?
Yeah.
The government lie? That's not a possibility.
Well, I have another quick note. There was minimal coverage at the time of the incident. In Phoenix, a small number of local news outlets noted the event, but it received little attention beyond that. But on June 18, 1997, USA Today ran a front-page story that brought national news attention to the case. This was followed by news coverage on the NBC and ABC television networks, and the case quickly caught the popular imagination and has since become a staple of UFO-related documentary television, including the History Channel and Discovery Channel. I said, kind of strange that there wasn't much importance brought to the event or much thought to begin with, considering it was seen over such a wide area, you know?
Yeah.
And I was going to say, you think that's kind of like a snowball effect, in a way, how popular it got?
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. It sounds like a snowball effect that happens oftentimes when something happens, one person starts to talk about it, then another person talks about it, and then it spreads like wildfire. So that's probably what happened with the Phoenix Lights.
Yeah, I could see that. I was going to say, Brent, why do you think this case didn't get very much news coverage at the time?
I'm not sure. It's kind of weird how it didn't. Maybe it was just kind of something that no one really thought would be a big deal until everyone was like, oh, wait a minute, this is kind of weird.
Yeah.
Well, I'll go out on a limb and say, could there have been a gag order put to the news stations by the government about it? Is that a possibility, you guys think?
Could be. I think maybe the government wanted people to just stop talking about it altogether, and that might have been their attempt. I don't know, it's hard to say. I was going to say, we have 6 minutes left in the show, and a quick note before I get everyone's final opinion. The government clearly stated they tried to debunk the Phoenix Lights, where it was seen over the major cities of Tucson and Phoenix and Glendale and all that down there. But they haven't even tried to make any attempts to debunk the northern first group of lights that was seen over Nevada and northern Arizona. They debunked where it was one major craft flying around. They don't try to debunk the earlier cases where it was several lights coming and going from each other, like, you know what I mean, like turning into one craft and then dispersing, and they don't try to debunk that at all. So clearly the government has to admit that at least the first group of lights is unidentifiable, even if they can say it was definitely flares for the second group. Silence. But anyway, what's your guys' final opinions on the Phoenix Lights? What do you think, Nick?
Well, I think that the first set of lights was probably extraterrestrial. I think that the government has gone out of its way now to kind of cover it up. They probably did a military exercise to try to duplicate the Phoenix Lights, to say that it was flares are not extraterrestrial, and I think they probably have even put some sort of a gag order or whatnot onto the local media. So I think something big happened. Unfortunately, we cannot know what it is because our good old friends of the government are covering it up. I'm not trying to sound like Dale Gribble too much, but that's what I believe happened, and maybe one day we'll know the answer, but for now we don't know.
So what do you think, Tim?
Well, like I agree with Nick. I think, like you were saying, that one, what was it, 2007? The second one, I think they tried to replicate it, maybe to, like, you know, make more people think it was military related.
Mm-hmm.
But I do believe in 1997 something truly extraterrestrial did visit our planet, I believe. And I believe the people seen what they've seen. So.
Except for that astronomer who changed the story 3 times.
What's that?
Except for the astronomer who changed his story 3 different times for different TV stations.
Oh, yeah, except for that one. That one's a loser.
What do you think, Brent?
Yeah, I definitely think something extraterrestrial did happen on that day.
So do you think that the first set of lights and the second set of lights were the same thing?
I've never heard of the second set of lights before until you mentioned it, but I think it could be the same thing.
And I guess my final opinion, because you have 3 minutes left in the show, I'd have to say, yeah, I think it definitely is extraterrestrial. The government could try to debunk the second set of lights, but like I said, they never tried anything for the first. Even if they use those flares that they're talking about, that specific model of flare and the altitude that they claim it was dropped at would have only been seen from 70 miles away. And the witnesses clearly said they've seen a ship, a giant craft, as it flew over them. And it's not just a small group of people. These are major cities and major giant groups of people. So they've definitely seen what they've seen. We have about 2 minutes left in the show. I guess I'll give you a preview for next show. Well, we're going to have a show next Saturday at 3 p.m. Pacific like we usually do. And it'll be, I'm not exactly sure what the topic is at this moment, but we'll figure it out by later today. Again, I'd like to thank my co-hosts in the panel for doing the show with me today. I'd like to thank everyone that was in the chat, online, asking questions, and everyone else that will contribute to the show. I'll say, let my co-hosts say their goodbyes, and then we'll end the show for this week.
All right, everybody, goodbye.
Bye.
And thanks, everybody, for listening to BSP Radio. Tune in next week.
Between what we see and what we think we know and believe, there are worlds. There are things that we cannot understand. Bigfoots Pad Paranormal Investigations team is in charge of the field. Bigfoots Pad Paranormal Investigations